Hi guys, this is gsn.com and I'm here with a review of the OnePlus Nord CE5. We've already reviewed the OnePlus Nord 5, we've unboxed both of them when they came up, and this is supposed to be a lighter version of the OnePlus Nord 5. Perhaps a phone which competes with the likes of, I would say, Galaxy A36, Nothing Phone 3A, and the basic Honor 400, but also maybe less power than them. Now, it's supposed to have a pretty generous battery, a dual back camera with some promise, and even more AI features compared to OnePlus flagships, courtesy of OnePlus AI. So let's get straight to it. The price is around $400 for this handset. Now, there are some visual modifications compared to the predecessor. I wouldn't say they're major. The look is a bit more elegant and more well-rounded and finished. It's minimalistic, and we have two color options. It's either black or dark gray, or you can also opt for white, with a marble-like gradient. So the white model is called something like Marble Mist. And this one here, well, it's called Black Infinity. It's supposed to inspire immersiveness and quiet. Now, the handset measures 8.27 millimeters in thickness if you choose Marble Mist, or 8.17 if you choose this one here. The weight is 199 grams. It's supposed to be a bit heavy, but honestly I'm not feeling that heft in my hand, which is good news. It's flat, which helps with the grip, flat on all sides, and the camera doesn't protrude much. It actually reminds me of the camera of a, I would say, cheaper iPhone. I like the finishing, which is matte, it doesn't have fingerprints, and you can see that on the screen you have pre-applied from the factory a screen protector. By the way, I should probably also mention we have IP65 certification for water and dust proofing. It's a well-built phone, but it's still pretty large if you have a small hand. I'm not sure you can reach the top part of the screen easily. At least it's not very wide. Now, as far as the screen is concerned, so we're dealing with a fluid AMOLED 6.77-inch panel with a Full HD Plus resolution, 10-bit support, 1 billion colors, HDR10+, and there's even a 120 Hz refresh rate. I'm going to take the screen for a spin now. I love to see AMOLED here. The LCD era is gone even for more affordable devices. The screen-to-body ratio is 89.7%, which is above the predecessor and above the Galaxy A56. We have a pretty decent contrast here, even full sunlight, a wide array of colors, pretty wide view angles as you can see for yourself. So all in all, a solid AMOLED panel, which is, by the way, confirmed by our very own tests. So we have the tests here, and we achieved 1293 lux units, which is pretty amazing considering we surpassed even the Galaxy Z Flip 6, Z Flip 5, OnePlus Nord 5, and a few other phones. We're actually pretty close to flagships, and we're even surpassing some flagships. One example that comes to mind, I see that we're beating the Xiaomi 14T Pro, Galaxy S24 Plus, and S24 Ultra, so yeah, definitely a bright panel. Now, going past the screen and going inside the phone, we're running into a new face, the MediaTek Dimensity 8350 Apex. It's a 4nm CPU, and I'm curious to see just how big the difference is compared to the OnePlus Nord 5 and its Snapdragon 8S Gen 3. And also it's competing with the Galaxy A36, so I'm even more curious about that. Now, aside from this CPU, we're treated here with 8 GB of RAM and 128 GB of storage. If I remember correctly, there should also be a microSD card slot. Now we're off to the tests, and let's see what we're getting here. So, first of all, I'm talking about benchmarks, the most famous of which is Antutu 10. 1.33 million points is the score we have here. At first sight, we're surpassing Google Pixel 9a, Honor 200 Pro, Galaxy S23, yes, which is actually pretty solid. Very small difference between this one and the Nord 5, which had 1.4 million points. So, in the end, not bad. This is Geekbench 6 in the single-core test, above Xiaomi 13T Pro and above OnePlus Nord 4, which is not bad. We're beating OnePlus Nord 4 and S20 Fan Edition and Galaxy A56 in the multi-core, once again a bit above expectations. When it comes to the throttling test, let's see how we did. So we lost quite a bit of performance, 32%, but not as much as flagships, which even lose 50% or even more. So I would say it's quite a lot, but not a record breaker. As far as the GPU goes, we're above OnePlus Nord 4 again, which is definitely impressive, and also above Galaxy A55, Honor 400, so this MediaTek went above my expectations. You're probably wondering if there have been any compromises related to the temperature. Well, guess not. 38.8 degrees Celsius in benchmarks. In games, a pretty cool 34.8 degrees. So, pretty impressed. On the battery front, there is a 5200 mAh unit in the global version, while India gets a 7100 mAh unit. We in the European Union are very angry because of the legislation, which will not let phone makers bring huge battery phones in our region, and that makes me angry. We have silicon carbon, and we also have bypass charging, so you can do gaming straight from the plug and bypass the battery. Now let's see how we did in the tests. First things first, we have the continuous video playback test with a pretty impressive 26 hours and 21 minutes. However, nowadays we're getting even 38 hours, so it's hard to be properly impressed. Still pretty good. Keep in mind that the OnePlus Nord 5 with the very same battery capacity goes much higher at 31 hours. Anyway, we surpassed Galaxy A36 and it's 23 hours, and Galaxy A56, which is also 23 hours. We even I should also mention that we're below the Motorola Edge 60 Pro, which has 1 hour extra. This is continuous usage measured with the PC Mark application benchmark, 13 hours and 50 minutes. It's not that impressive if I'm being honest. So yeah, at least we beat the Nord 5 and it's 11 hours and 47 minutes. So OnePlus optimization and the MediaTek CPU definitely helps. However, Galaxy A56 is superior with 15 hours and Honor 400 has 14 hours and 5 minutes. So it's okay, but not a record breaker. The charging is actually solid at 80 watts. We don't have a charger in the box, so we had to rely on another one. A full charge is actually in a decent 53 minutes, and after just 30 minutes you're at 69%. All in all, not that bad. Of course, there are some power saving features here. Now, there's an anomaly if we're discussing the acoustics of the phone. We only have a singular speaker at the bottom. There aren't stereo speakers. There's been a while since I've seen a phone with a singular mono speaker. So let's put it to the test. I would say that both the high notes and the low notes are prominent, and they kind of overlap and surpass each other as if they were dueling. The maximum volume brings some distortion, but the volume is definitely not a record breaker. We could have used a stereo speaker or a better speaker at the bottom. Well, there's that. At least you have, I would say, enough bass. So, measuring with a test that involves a typical acoustic sample, we achieved 84 decibels. Which is not very impressive. We usually like to see above 85 here, and with this 84 we're on somewhere on the 368 spot among 600 phones. We did surpass phones like the, let's see here, I see only old handsets here. Razer 40 Ultra was surpassed, Galaxy S20 Fan Edition, Galaxy Z Fold 3, Motorola Edge 50 Ultra, some of the new ones, so to say, Galaxy A52. I don't see many novelty here. However, we did somehow beat the iPhone 16 Pro Max in this test. In the multimedia test, which involves the game Asphalt, we're at 95.3. It's decent, but also not a record breaker. It's at the level of the very old Xiaomi Mi 6 and several other old handsets, like for example Galaxy A36. We're the exact equal of the Galaxy A36, which is, by the way, new, I know it. It's also equal of the OnePlus 13, surprising, and the Realme GT6. It's in decent company, but still definitely not a record breaker. Okay, so it's camera time. Let's discuss the camera. So OnePlus Nord CE5 has a dual setup at the backside, a dual photo setup. We're dealing with a main 50 megapixel camera with a Sony Lithia 600 sensor, which was favored by Motorola quite a lot, f1.8 aperture, and 0.8 micron pixels, optical image stabilization, and PDAF. The other camera is an 8 megapixel ultra wide shooter with f2.2 aperture and 112 degree. As far as I know, it doesn't have autofocus for your macro needs. As a comparison, the OnePlus Nord 5 has a 50 megapixel main camera and an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, but that one has autofocus. Now, we're losing macro capture and the main sensor is a bit smaller, so that's that. Selfie-wise, there's also a bit of a difference in this cutout here. We have a 16 megapixel shooter and fixed focus, while the Nord 5 gets a 50 megapixel shooter. We are getting 4K capture at 60 frames per second on this model, and a few other features like slow-mo, dock scanner, panorama, dual view, high-res, time-lapse, still shift, of course portrait with some extras here, including a bunch of filters inspired by the world of film. We have a night mode here, including a tripod mode, and a photo section with 2x zoom, basically cropping from the main sensor. This is the video section with a special stabilization ultra steady option, only in full HD 60 frames per second. And finally Pro with tweaks to the white balance, focus, exposure, shutter and ISO. When everything's said and done, it's time to see the photo gallery taken by my colleague and draw some conclusions. Okay, so we have 190 items on this handset. We have photos, we have videos, daytime shots, nighttime shots. And one thing I have to agree with is that this phone can capture some pretty nice close-ups. However, the color palette isn't as wide as we've seen on other mid-rangers. And also the shades of green, for example, aren't as expanded as the Galaxy A56, for example. What this phone does quite nicely is capture the light. I mean, the way the light source shines on certain objects is very well represented. And the zoom isn't half bad, even though we don't have a telephoto camera. The digital magic handles it like a champ, even at 5 or 10x. We've seen that more often than not nowadays thanks to AI. The colors are quite fine, and talking about these roses here, even in the full sunlight, which can cause some distortion. And even though we don't have that cool 50 megapixel camera of the OnePlus Nord 5, this 16 megapixel shooter does a fine job. There's no oversaturation, there's no overexposure, there's plenty of details, and even without autofocus, the face is kept in focus and it's pretty well detailed, even during the night time. So yeah, that's pretty fine. The front camera definitely delivers. Okay, now back to the daytime shots. Let's see several other captures. In spite of the fact that it's summer and usually cameras are prone to overexposure and oversaturation, that didn't happen here, and I'm pretty happy about it. This is the capture with the main camera, this is the capture with the ultra wide camera, which makes the image a bit more whitish, as you can see for yourself, and of course the details are lacking in the center and some deformation on the sides, which is to be expected from an 8 megapixel camera. Once again, the color of the lighting is what captured my imagination in these shots. Okay, so every once in a while, some of the ultra-wide shots will feel a bit overexposed, but the main camera captures colors in a pretty adept manner, if not a bit cold, if you ask me, which is counterintuitive compared to the hot summer we have out there. Several more shots of nature here and some selfies with a pretty decent focus and blur of the background. Now, if you're capturing objects and want to do a bokeh shot of those, a portrait shots, things are quite fine. I would say there are some inaccuracies here in the top part of this light, but in general I was happy with the results. Okay, I think it's time to talk about the low light shots now, because we have plenty and we have it in a more, I would say, elegant scenario. You can see some of these shots here. The street light sources are pretty well represented. Once again, the color of the sources of light is well represented. You can see that it's red, it's purple, it's white light. And I'm happy to inform you that not one source of light has been expanded here. So that's nice to see. There's no flashing lights, there's no halo around the lights. Everything is perfect just as you perceive it. Perhaps even surpass my expectations for low light capture. Now, we also used the night mode and we had a Nord 5 nearby, and believe it or not, there's a lot of similarity between these two captures. You can actually compare the Nord 5 shots with the Nord CE5 shots, and you'll see that they can compare to each other, even though the price is quite a bit lower. So all in all, a pretty good performance of the phone, perhaps also aided by AI. Otherwise, I can't quite explain the excellent quality of these nighttime shots, even without expanded light sources. Now let's talk about the videos. Okay, so you have this video here, which is a stabilization test, so let's talk about it. Once again, we're filming mostly in 4K 60 frames per second, and we also did the test video with a steady shot. I mean, the stabilization seems fine, but there's quite a bit of overexposure in the frame, as you can see for yourself, particularly in the shades of green. We have another stabilization test here, once again handled like a champ. I don't quite have many objections for this phone, but the sun definitely burns the scenario on a torrid day. We have some panning here and a zoom test a bit. Of course, after 2-3x, you should just give up. There's too much noise for that, which was to be expected if you're considering the price and the segment of the phone. This is the focus test. I would say it's only decent, alternating between the foreground and the background, quite fast and accurate. Okay, and aside from that, I think we also have a selfie video here somewhere. We're limited to Full HD, just so you know. This is it. Full HD video, which is decent for TikTok, but lacking autofocus and lacking more details is not that impressive. The good thing is that Full HD is the recommended thing for Facebook and TikTok. They don't have 4K vids just yet. And we also have a color test here. These are the colors of the fans. They feel a bit washed out for me. Once again, the color palette isn't that wide. Now, during the nighttime, I would say we have more fascinating scenarios. They go something like this. There are reflections, there's a bit of noise, and some of the lights are a bit overblown if you ask me. The quality drops quite a bit. However, one constant of these captures has been the sound. Quite good quality of the sound we capture, of the ambience, throughout these images. People walking around. Quite crowded venue in Bucharest. Not very clear, and you can see that the trees here, you cannot see each leaf, you can just see a conglomerate of leaves grouped together. So yeah, details not that impressive. Of course, the zoom also drops during the nighttime. So all in all, feels like a mid-ranger. I would say it's somewhere between the Galaxy A26 and A36. At its best, it's A36. Doesn't quite rise to the level of the A56, at least not in the color palette. However, some of these low light captures are quite memorable. Now, when it comes to the connectivity side of things, we can talk about the following. So we have 5G, we have Wi-Fi 6, dual band, Bluetooth 5.4, there's even infrared, and somehow the port has been hidden, and at the bottom an USB-C 2.0 port. There's GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, BDS, QZSS, and Navic, and we have 2 nano SIM card slots, and the speed test goes something like this. So this is what we achieved as far as 5G is concerned. Quite good. 824 megapers in download and 132 megapers in upload. I would say we're doing quite fine. So not a big objection here from me. There's also things like VPN, NFC, private DNS, Android Auto, multi-screen connect, remote PC control linked to Windows, and even a feature that lets you connect to your iPhone and things like that. So you have share with iPhone or PC. Now we can talk about the software, and I've talked about a lot about the software in the unboxing. It's OxygenOS 15 applied on top of Android 15. So we're getting 4 years of major Android updates, 6 years of security updates. This is OxygenOS 15, you probably know it already, and you have the shelf feature here, which honestly not many people are using. We have a fingerprint scanner in the screen, which is quite snappy. We have the customization here, which is borrowed from Oppo and Realme, with themes always on display, colors, fingerprint animation, edge lighting. We also have a sidebar, which includes a file dock, screen recording, and translation. But if you are inside an app, the options will change a bit. Well, not here in YouTube, but in the web browser, they may change. We have AI Summary, which does a summary of your web page, and AI Speak, which reads it out to you. Now, aside from that, there are some AI features here. So, for example, we have the Photos application here as an alternative to the other ones. So, if you go to the camera and select a photo here and press Edit, you'll be treated to the AI editor, which should have some AI smarts. You have AI Recompose, Eraser, Detail Boost, Unblur, or Reflection Eraser. You can also use the AI from Google. Speaking of Google, you can keep pressed here and do the whole circle to search feature. Look it up online, recognize music, or simply translate what's on the screen. If you press here on the side, you're going to be triggering Google Gemini Live. You can actually speak to it. And you're going to press it here. And with Gemini, you can actually go ahead and trigger. Okay, so turn up the volume, go here. You can share your camera or share your screen with Gemini Live and ask it questions about whatever you're seeing around. The full suite of OnePlus things with AI are called OnePlus AI. There's something called Mindspace here, which was triggered by a special button on the side of the OnePlus Nord 5. We don't have that here, but what we do have is a gesture to make use of it. So a swipe down is a screenshot, a swipe up with 3 fingers will send stuff to the Mindspace. So yeah, it's a pretty interesting area. It's powered by Brino, which is the, I would say, assistant from Oppo. You can gather things here from Chrome, from your photos, from your screenshots, from your email. Things will be stored much like the Nothing space that we have on the Nothing Phone 3a Pro with that button. Basically analyzes what's in the image and finds what's useful for you. Only in English for now. So other things, let's see here. We should also have a note-taking application here. If you give a plus, you also have these options here related to your assistant. You can format notes, clean them up, polish them, continue writing, elaborate, shorten, change the tone. And should you find yourself recording things, You should also be able to transform them from an audio recording. You can transform it from an audio recording to a text recording. That's a trendy feature nowadays, and I don't see why it's not available on this handset. So yeah, there's that. Okay, let's see if it actually works. Most of the AI features here will work more in English. You can summarize it, by the way. In English, not all the languages out there, but quite a few of them. There's also a translate feature here, which is this one here. You can enter text to translate, use the camera, have a conversation, or do it live. When everything's said and done, you should also find an AI search feature, which is available for the files, for the settings, and for your notes, calendar, or for your mind space. These are some of the options available here. We also have some in accessibility and convenience, live alerts, smart sidebar, floating window, one-handed mode, gloves mode, Zen space, a kids mode, and a simple mode. I'm pretty sure I forgot something. It probably has to do with pinching the screen or keeping it pressed like this. You can see the widgets here. They're rather typical. And there's one more thing. Gamers will get this dedicated area with frames per second, performance modes, do not disturb and capture modes, while Phone Manager takes care of your resources, viruses, security scanner, battery, and payment protection. When everything's said and done, is the end of the review, and let's talk about the pros and cons. On the pro side, minimalistic design, good looking, matte finish without fingerprints, a pretty large and bright screen, nothing to complain about that. We have bypass charging for gaming, so charging the handset straight, bypassing the battery. The MediaTek processor actually surprised me in performance and even temperature. MicroSD card slot checks out. Appealing bonuses at its debut. The headphones and the charger are bundled in some countries. The camera delivers decently and particularly surprised me in the nighttime. Now, drawbacks. The battery is smaller than the Indian version. The build is polycarbonate, we only have one speaker, and stabilization may feel a bit weird at times, plus the oversaturation of our exposure happens every once in a while. At the end of the day, the phone should be a rival for the Galaxy A56 and A36, however it's quite pricey. The price should drop if it properly wants to rival those models, which have already become cheaper. The surprise here is probably the nighttime capture. Aside from that, it's quite decent in gaming, it goes above expectations in gaming, and may be more future-proof than the Samsung ones when it comes to the processor. However, not when it comes to the Android updates. We have, I would say, enough RAM and storage, plus that whole microSD thing. The only thing to complain about is that we don't have the Indian battery version here, which is simply huge. That's it from us. This has been the review of the OnePlus Nord CE5 from gsno.com. Goodbye.